Jim Hockaday, getting ready for another video here on what is Christianity. Let's just delve right into it as fast as we possibly can. I'm here in Florida, had a couple of days to play some golf with Kevin Durant and here with Kevin and Annie in their home. And so I'm heading to Houston to connect with Aaron, and we're going to be doing a meeting with Chad Gonzalez in his advanced healing meetings there in Houston. And so looking forward to that. I trust you're doing well. Let's jump in and see if we can't pick up where we left off concerning how to connect with God at the lowest level. I know this is going to sound too simple, but I really want to convince you to open up your heart and your mind to God being everywhere, wanting to be involved with you in all that you do, so that we can get actually to the end goal, which is beginning to move forward spiritually, where God's able to have freedom to get into your life and do things for you that he's always wanted to do. Okay, so number one, we do these videos on Adventures in Grace. Number one, for God to become more real to you. It's a very interesting subject, isn't it? Because it should be a given for real Christianity, which then tends to cause me to think maybe we haven't majored as much on the simple things as we have majored on the doctrines of the church, which are all good and necessary. But Paul didn't want you to stay in his letters. Paul wanted you to read his letters and then enjoy the benefits of what those letters were bringing you to in your life. And they were bringing you to the tangibility of God being real, so that you could hear him speak, you could sense his presence and walk with him. Prayers would be something that would be answered. And a lot of times prayers, when you're connected with God, are answered even in your thoughts. Now unto him who's able to do exceedingly abundantly above all we ask or think. See, Paul was sharing with us that even thinking, when you're connected with God, will give God the right to actually produce results. I know this sounds really crazy, but it's really, really true. So number two, if connecting with God and finding him everywhere is number one, then what would number two become? Well, the benefit of drawing close to God is that you begin to interact with him, and it becomes a normal interaction, just like any person that you love and spend time with. You know, they share something with you and you respond to them, or they share something with you that means your response would be to meet them somewhere. Isn't it interesting? According to the time given to meet, you're already prepared an hour early, getting yourself ready, taking a shower, putting on the clothes that you need for the event, and then making sure that you get there on time, which would be a few minutes early, probably 10 minutes early, so that you're there exactly when they get there. Why would you do all of that? Well, that's the response. That's the interaction that comes from getting to know somebody. Now, was it difficult to formulate those responses? And the answer would be, well, of course not. I love them. I spend time with them. I mean, I trust them. Well, that sounds like faith. But it doesn't sound like faith contrived by someone trying to read about someone that they've never met, hoping that they're actually going to be where they're supposed to be, when you don't even know if that's actually talking about you. And now we placed ourselves back in what it seems like most people are doing, is trying to use the Bible to get faith so that they can get an answer, instead of seeing that the scriptures bring you to a person that you hang out with all day long, and the response to that person is the faith that you need, the positioning that you position yourself in, so that you can receive very naturally, because it should be a natural experience. Now, number three means you have testimonies to share. It's good, isn't it? This is exactly what we're out after, is constantly walking in testimony. And that could be like me on the golf course yesterday. No, I didn't play so great, but I had a lot of opportunity to interact with God, with Jesus, with the Holy Ghost, to spend time with them. And my interaction with them actually was really, really good. Now, there were times of distraction when frustrations came over my game, and I had to yesterday learn how to overcome that. And that wasn't necessarily easy. Had quite a few holes where I was really kind of withdrawn and inward and just kind of licking my wounds over how horrible that was and why I was doing so poorly on those few holes. But then the Lord helped me to just get back to just not caring, just enjoying the day, enjoying the companionship with my friends. I could be in Colorado. I text Erin today. She's leaving for Houston in just a little bit. And she said there's a snowstorm. So just trusting she'll have good roads. She'll make it there just fine. The Lord's with her. Praise the Lord. But I could be thinking about snowstorms when right now I'm looking out at a beautiful sunny day here in Orlando, Florida. And the temperatures will get up to probably 70. And I'm flying to Houston, and it's going to be 70 degrees there as well. So, I have a lot to be thankful for. And all of a sudden, God helps you to pull back into what's most important, and that is the divine connection between you and Him, not letting things that are around you distract you until you lose, if you will, you lose your footing, you lose your connection. God's not so real to you anymore. Did God go anywhere? No, He doesn't go anywhere. But we go places in our mind, in our thoughts, in our emotions, in the distractions of the day, and all of a sudden, God's not as real. Well, God wants to help each and every person begin to develop this interaction that becomes very real, where you can hear His voice, where you can begin to sense His presence, and you begin to walk with Him. And is it not amazing that God would help us with that kind of connection through simple things that are in this world? We know that, how He dealt with how He dealt with Abram, when he questioned whether or not he was going to have a son. Well, what did God do? Go outside, look at the stars, see if you can number them, so shall your descendants be. Well, Abram used to be a moon worshiper, so looking at the stars was like God saying to you, 1 + 1 = what? Because if you know what 1 + 1 =, then surely you will walk in the divine connection of health and healing. And you say, this is awesome. I know what it is. It's 2. It hasn't changed in all these years. And God just gave me an easy exam, something that I actually know about. So isn't it amazing that God could use the expertise of your being a mechanic to help you to see some things concerning the things you do on cars or on trucks, and all of a sudden it makes sense that that's how God works with you? God can work with someone who's a real organizer to help you to understand how He works with you. See, God's looking to help you to connect with anything that will help you to connect with Him. He's not asking you to come up to the third heaven and see the throne of God and look at the Father and look at the angels in order for you to have the kind of connection that would cause a healing to take place when Jesus already defeated the devil, secured for you that wonderful healing, and all He's looking for is for you to make a simple connection. Now, Matthew 11, 27-30, the Message Bible, shows us why what I'm talking about is absolutely true. Now, Jesus resumed talking to the people, but now tenderly. The Father has given me all these things to do and say. This is a unique father and son operation coming out of father and son intimacies and knowledge. No one knows the Son the way the Father does, nor the Father the way the Son does. But I'm not keeping it to myself. I'm ready to go over it line by line with anyone willing to listen. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me, work with me, watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting upon you. Keep company with me and you'll learn how to live freely and lightly. Isn't it interesting that God, through Jesus, is saying right here, I want you to have the exact same relationship with me that my son Jesus does. And He's going to show you how to do it line by line. Well, we're going to get into some things that Jesus actually said. Before we do, I'm going to just go over real briefly the thoughts here that we shared last time, except not make any of the comments. But Paul actually shares the very same thoughts. Jesus wants to give us some really simple things to do in order to actually begin to experience him through a divine connection. So, Paul says over in Romans chapter 1, around verse 19, for the wickedness of humanity deliberately smothers the truth and keeps people from acknowledging the truth about God. This is the Passion Translation. And what is he saying here? He's saying that on purpose, humanity and the way the world spins, kind of sounds like a soap opera. The way the world spins, the way the world does life is antithetical to the way that God does life. It's the opposite. The things around you are smothering you. They're keeping you from seeing these God encounters everywhere so that you would acknowledge them, and by acknowledging them, you would experience him. He goes on further to say, in reality, the truth of God is known instinctively, for God has embedded this knowledge inside of every human heart. Do you mean instinctively? I know God? And the answer is absolutely yes. If you were just to take that right there and for the next 2 days get happy and repeat that over and over and over again, instinctively, I know God. I know him. Instinctively, I do. You would begin to immediately open the ears to hear and open the eyes to see him in many different ways, shapes, and forms. And all of a sudden, your divine connection would begin to grow. He goes on to say here, opposition to truth cannot be excused on the basis of ignorance, because from the creation of the world, the invisible qualities of God's nature have been made visible, such as his eternal power and transcendence. He made his wonderful attributes easily perceived, for seeing the visible makes us understand the invisible. Isn't that interesting? You can easily see him through seeing the visible things that God has made. In other words, when you begin to behold the beauty of what God's nature reveals, it reveals God himself. And if you'll start right there, which is the lowest level of making a connection, any heathen can do this. Certainly any Christian can do this. Start right there and begin to notice the things that are around you that God has placed there on purpose so that you would be blessed, and you would then say, God, Father, Jesus, it's so awesome. You're everywhere, aren't you? And the moment you even say that, he's going to say, well, let me open your eyes so that you can see that, yes, I am. And now you'll say the next day, Lord, I saw you like 4 or 5 times more than yesterday. And the Lord would say, would you like to see me all day long? And the moment you begin to understand the interchange of the simple things that are staring you in the face, you'll begin to spiritually grow, and your spiritual connection will become aware, perceptible. And in that moment, you're no longer thinking, I don't know, you're thinking, I actually do. Listen, I give you 1 week at putting this into practice, and you're going to hear God's voice, recognize his presence, and see some wonderful answers to prayers. Now let's move a little bit further over here to Matthew and chapter 6. We're going to look at verse 19 first. And this is Jesus talking here. So now he's going to say the same thing that the Apostle Paul did. I want this reiterated until you realize this isn't goofy. This isn't just Jim who is different. And oh boy, you better be careful of him. He might be getting off. No, I'm not off. And I'm not different for the sake of being different. I'm different for the sake of seeing something that people can connect with and sharing that with you so you can get your relationship off the ground, for crying out loud. Last night, I had a wonderful experience, the first ever, where I saw the spaceship that was launched into orbit. I saw it take off from Cape Canaveral. And that's only, 60 miles away from where we are. But all of a sudden, you could see this orange hue in the sky that was like a little dome in the distance. And all of a sudden, breaking through that dome was a ball of fire going straight up. And then it began to move horizontally as it began to go into orbit. I saw it with my eyes. It was awesome. It's the first time I've ever seen that. I have a new experience. But you know what? I wouldn't have experienced it at all if that great orb, so to speak, of orange before breaking through was this ball of fire that went up into the air. What if it didn't work? What if something went wrong? Then it would have been just a big orb of orange in the sky, and I wouldn't have seen a rocket ship break through and go up. You need power. You need to get off the ground. This is going to help you get off the ground. So I'm just telling you it like it is. Do this for a week, and you'll begin to see a prayer answered. And then you'll have a grace story to send us. Yay. Here it is. Verse 19. Don't hoard treasure down here where it gets eaten by moths, corroded by rust, or worse, stolen by burglars. Stockpile treasure in heaven where it's safe from the moth, rust, and burglars. It's obvious, isn't it? The place where your treasure is the place you will most want to be and end up being. This is the Message translation. Well, notice right here, Jesus is saying some things that are really, really good. Do you know why Genesis is important? Do you know why Revelations is important? Because they're the bookends. Genesis shows you what God's intention was, and Revelation, in the end of all things, shows you God's intention. But the beginning of all things, it's not good. And what does it show you? Probably you shouldn't get too attached to the things of this earth because there's not a lot in them that are going to go anywhere with you for eternity. Right? And look at what Jesus is saying. Why would you hoard treasure down here? It's not going anything. It just dies with the earth. No, spend your time putting your attention on things that have meaning from above. And then he reveals an all too important, very harsh statement. The place where your treasure is the place you will most want to be and end up being. And you may be saying, yes, I do that all the time. I'm always about the spiritual things. Oh, really? Oh, really? Sorry here for being your nemesis, but really? Then look at the time spent on where you put your time, where you put your effort, where you put your thoughts and emotions, and come up with where your treasure really is, because that's where you most want to be and where you're going to find yourself being. I told you, it's harsh. And what does it do to every single one of us? It shows us the truth. That we aren't necessarily so spiritually minded as we might want to think we are. That we are very, very earthly minded, and we've got a lot of unnecessary, divided attentions, distractions based on things that are going around us. Now, I'm not trying to tell you be on your face 24/7. I'm getting ready to show you here from what Jesus is sharing with us that there are ways while you're doing the things you need to do, like your job, and the things you need to do, like going to the grocery store, and the things you need to do, like paying attention to your wife and your kids and enjoying time with them. You can still be connecting with God, and your treasure from the inside is God through and through 100%. From the moment you get up till the time you wake up the next day, God is becoming real. And you can't have a connection with God like that and stay the same. We're going to stop right there. We're going to come back and get into what Jesus is saying here. It's so, so good. And we're wrapping this up really well. Come on, stay with us on these adventures in grace. We're going to see you the next time. But make sure you go to jhmi@jimhockaday.com. That's where you'll find our email. Send us your grace stories. Now, I'm going to look you in the eye right here. Get real close. Send us your grace stories, okay? We want to hear more of them because I know God's doing wonderful things. Even if it's what I shared today, how I was able to see the distractions of getting frustrated with my golf game and then come right back into the awareness of God. I got distracted again, came right back into the awareness. And what did I find after that? Jim, you are not as connected as you need to be if you would allow these simple little things to bother you. So become more aware of your connection. See you next time on Adventures in Grace.